The lost horror of ancient China. Understanding the psychology of ancient peoples is never an easy task. As a matter of fact, it proves next to impossible most of the time. Imagine being condemned to death, not a merciful, swift execution, but so contrived and painful that it pushed the threshold of human torture to its limits. A punishment contrived not only to kill you, but also to make you acknowledge the depth of your own agony. This was not fiction, but rather real life. Execution by waist cutting was a very ancient Chinese punishment, much more than brutality. It was a spectacle, calculated and contrived to instill fear as a means of reinforcing power. The horrors were not just physical, but psychological. They would haunt the memories of any who witnessed or heard of it. Picture a crowded square on a day as hot as blazes. Right in the middle, there is a man who, trembling roped, waits for his sentence. His crime can be treason, theft, or perhaps just being on the wrong side of the wrong people. The specifics hardly mattered. What mattered was the punishment. The executioner steps forward with a blade in hand, heavy, razor-sharp, crafted for one devastating purpose, to cut the body in half at the waist. But this is not instantaneous. The blade cuts through flesh and bone, and organs beneath the ribcage. The torso remains alive, conscious indeed, for several minutes that must seem like eternity. Eyewitnesses have testified that they saw the condemned gasping, twisting in agony, trying to scream through blood-filled lungs as their heart and lungs resisted the inevitable. The crowd is paralyzed in horror and morbid fascination. This is an execution and a spectacle, a trial of suffering to show the absolute power of a state, and the suffering of the condemned is a gruesome but vivid reminder of what it costs to defy it. But there is one more harrowing truth about waist cutting. It wasn't about the person being punished. It was about everyone else. In ancient China, the punishments weren't just chosen for their barbarity. They had deep symbolism. The body, split in two, represented, but didn't stop at, physical destruction. The total rupture extended further, to society, to family, even to the afterlife. The implication was blunt. This is what you get when you cross authority. It was reserved for crimes like treason or rebellion, and the great degree of suffering inflicted was not just punitive for the victim himself, but rather a spectacle to instill terror in the hearts of those who would watch such a display. This was not about justice. It was psychological warfare, even grimmer. To the elite, this was not a disincentive. It was a form of amusement. History can bear witness to emperors and officials watching such executions for their amusement, taking delight in the pain they ordered. One man's pain cemented their rule over many. A reflection on fear and power. Waist cutting is an execution method, and a grim reminder of the cruel things human beings are capable of in their effort to exercise control. The comfort it provides for such barbarity is far beyond what truth would allow. Though the methods may have changed, the tactics remain. The fear of being silenced, oppressed, or manipulated is what has remained intact to be used as a weapon. But here is the other lesson of history. Fear has no hold on us unless we give it one. The bystanders in all those ancient crowds were powerless. They did, though, bear witness to injustice. And now, in our hands, are the tools with which to add our voices, to challenge systems entrenched in fear, to keep people cowed. We may never face the blade of the waist cutting, yet we know its echoes. Those moments when we have been divided, reduced, or asked to be silent. And the question goes, will we stand by or rise to resist? The story of waist cutting is so brutal, but then again, it does show a mirror to certain dark corners of humanity. What does it stir inside your soul? Does it remind you of how societies were controlled through fear, even up to this day? So let us take these lessons in the interests of a better and more humane future. No matter how harrowing, understanding past atrocities informs us in working together to ensure its mistakes are never to be repeated. Change begins with reflection, and indeed the courage to face up to even the darkest truth.